Hello, I'm R.A. Spratt, and I want to welcome people joining us this week on the Yoto podcast platform. Now, just so you know, most of the bedtime stories I tell here are standalone stories. But over the last year, we have been dipping in and out of the epic story of Odysseus, the hero from ancient Greek mythology. And this week, I'm going to be telling the second last installment of that tale. So if you can jump in right here, that'll be fine. I'm sure you'll pick it all up. But if you did want to go back to the beginning and start from the first episode, you can search back through the episodes. The first episode's called Odysseus, as told by Nanny Piggins, and it dropped on January 8th, 2025. Or you can go back and listen to any of the other episodes. You're going to find fairy tales, myths, legends, and mysteries. I hope you enjoy them all. Now let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Bedtime Stories with me, R.A. Spratt. Well, there's a lot going on here at Bedtime Stories HQ. For a start, the most exciting new development for me as a podcaster is that my neighbour 2 doors down has a rooster. I went to the Whitsundays festival. I was only gone for 4 days, and when I came back, my neighbour had a rooster. And just so you can visualise this, my house is at the back of the block, and their house is at the front of the block, like where houses normally are, and their chicken pen is right at the back of the block. So it's like closer to my office window than it is to their house. And the thing is, I love roosters. I love hearing them go all the time. So it doesn't bother me that it goes off at 4 o'clock in the morning or anything. I just put earplugs in. But it is a little bit difficult for this podcast. You will probably at some stage hear the rooster. And if it does go off, and I don't see why it wouldn't, because it's just been cock-a-doodle-doing for the last 5 minutes, about 10 times in the last 5 minutes. So when it goes off, I will stop so you can enjoy the sound. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't like to complain because, as I say, I do enjoy a rooster. You're not really meant to have them in town, though, because they do aggravate a lot of people. And I do love seeing drama play out in my neighbourhood. So I don't really want to personally complain because I want to wait and see how long it takes for other people to complain and whether the council gets involved or whether the people who own the rooster didn't realise, because sometimes you buy baby chickens and you don't realise one of them is a rooster until they grow up a bit and, wonder how long it'll take the people who own the rooster to crack and do something about it. So part of me is fascinated by this whole, potential live human drama taking place, not 25 minutes from my office window. I can literally see the coop through my office window because I'm up on the second story. It's just fabulous. They said when we moved to the country, everyone in Sydney, they said, "Oh, you'll be so bored. Nothing ever happens in the country." How wrong were they? I go away for 4 days, and now I'm living adjacent to a rooster. Anyway, that's fabulous. Other dramas of the week were Spotify. I've had a lot of dramas with Spotify. So if you are listening to this podcast through Spotify, you're a Spotify person. Oh my goodness. I don't really feel I should have to apologize because it's Spotify that sort of has been struggling to sort things out. But for those of you who just listen through other platforms, I'll explain what happened. So I posted last week's episode of this podcast, and Spotify has all these bots, these AI bots, that listen to the podcast or I guess read the transcript that they generate themselves. And the bot identified that I was reading chapters from a book. But of course the bot was not then able to figure out that it's my own book and that I'm an author and that I own the copyright. So the bot just flicked a switch that dropped the episode off Spotify, which, they've done that lots of times before. And normally what happens is I get an email and I hit a link and I appeal it, and about 24 hours later it comes back up. And it's not that big a deal. It just means that people who listen on Spotify, there's a delay of 24 hours or so. But this time, because I was away at a festival, it came up and there was a link, and I've only got my iPad with me and my eyesight's not very good, and I'm hitting the link and there's all these problems with the link. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. The link basically didn't work. So I waited until I got home and I was at my desktop because I thought, well, maybe it's something to do with the iPad and the fact that I'm only trying to do this on my phone and my iPad. Maybe it'll work when I get home and I can use a desktop. So I got home at the desktop and it did not work. So I had to start messaging Spotify to get them to sort it out. But the thing with when you try and get Spotify to sort a problem for you is everyone on the planet uses Spotify. So they get a lot of mail from people asking them to fix things. So everything is sort of super compartmentalized. And I was trying to explain it to them and it's kind of a weird problem. And they just obsessed about the link and trying to get the link to work and how the link should work. And I'm like, I don't really care if the link works. Can you just put the episode up so that people on Spotify can listen to it? And anyway, after like 2 or 3 days of like back and forth and just being constantly messaging with Spotify, and it was really frustrating and stressing me and giving me headaches, like literally, like I'm trying to stay calm because I know people who work in these centers, it's not a fun job and I don't want to be angry with anyone. But then it just occurred to me, I could just like make my life easier and leave them alone if I just dropped the episode again, reposted the episode on the podcast. So you may have noticed if you're not on Spotify that you have been able to download last week's episode twice. That is why. So I put it back up and I thought, well, maybe if I put it back up, the bot will identify it again. I'll get the link again and maybe this time the link will work. But weirdly, I put it back up and the bot didn't notice this time. I guess the bot was having like some sort of coffee break or maybe the bot was having a nap. But anyway, it didn't notice and the episode went through. So everyone has been able to listen to it now on Spotify. So that was the drama of last week. Spotify and a rooster. That's what's going on. They're my problems. All right. Well, now let's get into it. I did promise last week because I read the first 2 chapters in that book. And just for the bot that's listening, the first 2 chapters of my own book that I own the copyright over. And so now I want to finish the story off for you so you're not left on a cliffhanger. So I'll read the next chapter or so. I mean, obviously, it's a whole book. There will be a cliffhanger at the end of this, but I'll just get to the end of the first mini mystery. So now we're going to get into it. I feel scared to say the word chapter because I think that's going to be very triggering for the bot that's listening, but I'm just going to go for it. And if it gets dropped, I'll do the link thing again. But anyway, just so you know, these are the things I'm dealing with here. Anything else you need to know before I start? Oh, yeah. I'm reading this obviously because the audiobook of book 2 has just come out. So I'm reading you the first few chapters to encouraging you to buy it. Because buying my audiobook obviously helps me monetize this podcast so I can keep doing it for longer because I love doing it. And apparently thousands and thousands of people love listening to it. So I just want to keep, as I say, kind of kicking the can down the road. And if you buy the audiobook, that will help. All right. Now let's get into it. So we're reading Chapter Barnes. We're reading Friday Barnes, Under Suspicion, Chapter 3, Deadly Beans. Friday Barnes, you're not obliged to say anything unless you wish to do so, but whatever you say or do may be used in evidence. Do you understand? Asked Sergeant Crowley. Yes, said Friday. The National Counter-Terrorism Centre received an anonymous letter informing them that you have been making ricin in your dorm room, stated Sergeant Crowley. Ricin? Exclaimed Friday. The deadly poisonous powder derived from the seeds of the castor oil plant, said Sergeant Crowley. I know what ricin is, said Friday. Of course you do, said Sergeant Crowley. You've been making it in your dorm room. That's ridiculous, exclaimed Friday. Why would I do that? We don't claim to understand your agenda, said Sergeant Crowley, but we do know you have a history of this type of thing. I do not, protested Friday. Do you deny that last year in, Sergeant Crowley checked his notes, geography class, your pencil box exploded? Actually, it imploded, said Friday. Friday, now is not the time to be pedantic, said Uncle Bernie. But it did, said Friday, and I didn't do it. Why would I implode my own pencil box? Because you were honing your technique, suggested Sergeant Crowley. And why would I make ricin? Asked Friday. I don't have any grudges against anyone. And apart from anything else, it's really hard to make. First of all, you've got to... Shh, said Uncle Bernie. So you do know how to make it, pounced Sergeant Crowley. Of course, I was curious, said Friday. Isolating lectins is a fascinating field of research. This is nonsense, said Uncle Bernie. Unless you have some evidence, I suggest you release my niece right now before I have to contact a lawyer about pursuing a complaint of wrongful arrest. But we do have evidence, said Sergeant Crowley. Our crime scene investigation team locked off her dormitory and went through her room with a fine-tooth comb. Ugh, groaned Friday. You would have had to do that just before laundry day, when the hamper is full of dirty underwear. Uncle Benny sighed. "What have you got hidden in your room, Friday?" he asked. "Nothing," protested Friday. "We found an unregistered shortwave radio," began Sergeant Crowley. "I use that to talk to Uncle Bernie," said Friday. "It's important to stay in touch with family." "Military-grade night vision binoculars," continued Sergeant Crowley. "I sleep in a building with 200 teenagers," said Friday. "It would be stupid not to have night vision binoculars." "And a cavity drilled into the handle of your hockey stick containing ricin," said Sergeant Crowley. Uncle Bernie laughed. "Well, there's no way that can possibly be true. Friday would never own a hockey stick." "Actually, I do," admitted Friday. "You have to. It's essential school equipment." A constable came into the room carrying a large plastic bag with a hockey stick inside. Uncle Bernie scooted his chair back away from the table. "Is that thing safe?" he asked. "Even the tiniest particle of ricin is super dangerous." "Ask your niece, she's the expert," said Sergeant Crowley. "Do you deny this is your stick?" Friday leaned in for a closer look. "It's definitely mine. It's got a nick in the paint from when I tried to squash a spider but accidentally hit a light fitting instead. Also, it's got my name across the handle in my writing." "And do you deny that these are the ricin seeds?" asked Sergeant Crowley, producing a small plastic bag. It had been vacuum sealed in thick plastic and zip-locked inside another plastic bag. Uncle Bernie scooted his chair all the way back so that he was wedged up against the far wall. "This is crazy," he cried. "If that's ricin, we're all in danger." Friday peered at the bag for a moment, then burst out laughing. "What are you laughing about?" asked Sergeant Crowley. "This is a very serious matter." "You haven't got very good crime scene investigators, have you?" said Friday. "Let me guess. You got the two most junior officers on staff to go through my things. You probably weren't expecting to find anything and were shocked when they did." "So you admit it," accused Sergeant Crowley. "I don't admit anything," said Friday. "That's my hockey stick, but I didn't drill a hole in the handle, and I didn't put those beans in there. And even if I did, who cares? They're only beans. Beans that can be used to make ricin, one of the deadliest substances known to man," said Sergeant Crowley. "Electricity is deadly," said Friday, "and you've got 2 power sockets in this room. No one's arresting you." "Why did you hide them in your hockey stick?" demanded Sergeant Crowley. "I didn't," said Friday. "I've been set up, and by someone with a perverse sense of humour." "I don't see what's so funny about a terrorist threat," said Sergeant Crowley. "It's funny because not only is this not ricin, it's not even the castor seed that ricin comes from," said Friday, picking up the packet. "These are pinto beans. They look a lot like castor seeds, but are entirely harmless. In fact, if you've ever had a burrito, you've probably eaten them because pinto beans are the main ingredient in refried beans, a feature of Mexican cooking." "How do I know you're not lying?" asked Sergeant Crowley. "You don't," said Friday. "You'll have to check with a botanist or a Mexican chef. Or you could wait until the counter-terrorism unit gets here and ask them to run it through their forensic process. You should. It'll give them a good laugh." Sergeant Crowley drummed his fingers on the desk for a moment, then got up and walked over to the door. He opened it and leaned out. "Harris!" he barked. "Yes, boss," replied Harris. "Run down to the taco place next to the pub and get the chef back here. Pronto," ordered Sergeant Crowley. "And when I say run, I mean run, now." 6 minutes later, Jorge, a short-order chef from Guadalajara, had cleared Friday's name by confirming that the bag did indeed contain pinto beans. Sergeant Crowley immediately rang the counter-terrorism unit and told them to turn back. It had been a false alarm. "You can go now," said Sergeant Crowley sulkily. "Do you want me to make a complaint about wrongful arrest?" Uncle Bernie asked Friday. "We could pick up the forms while we're here." "No, of course not," said Friday. "I had a wonderful morning. I want to thank Sergeant Crowley. It's been very educational, and it got me out of double woodwork, so it was extra educational in that it didn't fill my head with redundant twaddle." "I can have an officer drive you back to school," offered Sergeant Crowley. "No, thank you," said Friday. "I'll drive her," said Uncle Bernie. "No, I mean I don't want to go," said Friday. "You're not going to confess to something else, are you?" groaned Uncle Bernie. "No, I just want to help Malcolm," said Friday. "Who's Malcolm?" asked Sergeant Crowley. "My friend outside," said Friday. "What friend?" asked Sergeant Crowley. "The gentleman you've got handcuffed to the bench," said Friday. "You mean the escaped prisoner and thief we've got handcuffed to the bench," said Sergeant Crowley. Just then there was a knock at the door. The lady police constable ducked her head into the room. "Boss, I just got a fax through from the prison. Our suspect doesn't match their physical description." "Are you sure?" asked Sergeant Crowley. "Our suspect is 6'5" and has blue eyes," said the lady police constable. "The guy who climbed over the wall this morning is 5'4" and has brown eyes. Also, he's only 20, so that's about 20 years younger than the guy we've got." "OK," said Sergeant Crowley. "So he's just a bum who stole a bracelet." "He didn't steal the bracelet, and I can prove it," said Friday, "if you take me to the scene of the crime." Sergeant Crowley sighed. He would have liked to have gone to the pub, or at least the taco bar. All that talk of refried beans had made him hungry. But solving the only other pressing matter on his plate that day would make things easier for him in the long run. Plus, he suspected that if he didn't cooperate, Friday would only embarrass him again. Chapter 4. The Real Culprit. Friday, Uncle Bernie, Sergeant Crowley and Malcolm all stood in the field at the back of Mrs. Knox's house. Mrs. Knox was the well-to-do lawyer's wife whose bracelet had been stolen. Strictly speaking, the field was a park, but the council had not gone to much trouble to turn it into what people normally think of when they hear the word park. It was just a field with grass and a few trees, which was actually rather nice. Friday could see why the wealthy Mr. and Mrs. Knox would choose a house overlooking this greenery. "So why were you walking this way?" Friday asked Malcolm. "Because he was looking for houses to break into," said Sergeant Crowley, rolling his eyes. "I didn't want to walk down the main street," explained Malcolm. "I didn't want to be stared at. I was just cutting through the town along the back streets." "Where were you headed?" asked Friday. "I got a place a few kilometres northwest of here," said Malcolm. "Really?" said Friday. "That would be near our school, Highcrest Academy. Have you heard of it?" "It rings a bell," said Malcolm. "Mrs. Knox is expecting us," said Sergeant Crowley. "Are we going to go and look at the house or not? I've been yelled at her enough this morning. I'd like to minimise the amount of yelling she does at me this afternoon." "Yes, absolutely," said Friday. "Lead the way." Sergeant Crowley took them through a gate in Mrs. Knox's back fence and across the yard. There was a deck at the rear of the house. Mrs. Knox was standing there waiting for them. "Is this the vagabond?" she asked, on spotting Malcolm. "The suspect," said Sergeant Crowley. "The alleged suspect," corrected Friday. "Give me my bracelet back," demanded Mrs. Knox. "He doesn't have it on him," said Sergeant Crowley. "He's probably sold it already," accused Mrs. Knox. "He doesn't have any cash on him either," said Sergeant Crowley. "You should be ashamed," accused Mrs. Knox. "Please don't harass the prisoner," said Sergeant Crowley. "I'm not," said Mrs. Knox, turning on the sergeant. "I'm talking to you. You should be ashamed. What sort of police force are you running here if this type of miscreant is allowed to wander the streets?" "Can you show me where the bracelet was?" asked Friday. "Who's this?" asked Mrs. Knox. "Have you invited the work experience girl to come and have a looky-loo around my house?" "She's my legal counsel," said Malcolm. "Ha!" scoffed Mrs. Knox. "Still, I suppose I should be happy you've chosen an adolescent to represent you. It should make the trial nice and quick." She opened the back door and walked in. Everyone else followed. "The bathroom's in here." Friday, Uncle Bernie, Sergeant Crowley and Malcolm entered. It was large for a bathroom, but even the largest bathroom is never really a large room. So with everyone standing there, it was quite a squash. Friday squeezed her way over to the window. "And this is where you left your bracelet?" she asked. "Yes," said Mrs. Knox. "I always take my jewellery off and put it there. Because normally I wouldn't expect the local police to allow prison escapees to roam around my back garden." "He didn't escape," said Sergeant Crowley. "He was released." "Well, that's just a sad reflection on the incompetence of the parole board," said Mrs. Knox. Friday looked closely at the windowsill. "Did you find any fingerprints?" she asked. "Only from Mrs. Knox," said Sergeant Crowley. "But that is consistent. He wouldn't need to leave fingerprints to pick up a bracelet. Besides, it was cold this morning and he had gloves in his pocket. Maybe he was wearing those." "Mrs. Knox," said Friday, "could you describe the bracelet for me, please?" "It was a sapphire bracelet," said Mrs. Knox. "It had a platinum chain setting and 9 brilliant blue sapphires." I see," said Friday, as she looked out across the backyard. "Give me a boost, Uncle Bernie." "All right," said Uncle Bernie, interlacing his fingers and holding them for Friday to step into, then boosting her up so she could clamber onto the window frame. "Do you mind?" exclaimed Mrs. Knox, before turning on the sergeant. "How dare you bring a pre-teen into my home and allow her to stand on my paintwork?" Sergeant Crowley rubbed his forehead. What with the terrorist, false alarm, and now this, he was not having a good day. Friday grabbed hold of the top of the window frame and awkwardly stood up on the windowsill. Because she was taller than the window was high, her head was outside the wall of the house, which meant she was precariously balanced. "What's she doing now?" demanded Mrs. Knox. "If you want your bracelet back," said Uncle Bernie, "you'd best just leave her alone. She's good at this type of thing." "What, irritating people?" asked Mrs. Knox. "Yes, but also solving mysteries," explained Uncle Bernie. Friday stood on the windowsill for some time, scanning first left to right and back again. Then she ducked her head back inside. "Mrs. Knox, have those acacia bushes behind your pool house been there for long?" "What, those green bushes?" "Yes, I suppose so," said Mrs. Knox. "The gardener planted them the year before last." "Then I know where the bracelet is," said Friday, with which she leapt out of the window and landed heavily on the damp lawn. "Ow!" "Friday!" exclaimed Uncle Bernie. "Are you okay?" "Yes," said Friday. "The ground was just a little bit further away than I thought." "Depth perception is not a great strength in her family," Uncle Bernie explained to the others. Friday hurried down the garden and around the pool, behind the pool house, and disappeared into the acacia hedge. "One forgets how insufferable children are," said Mrs. Knox. "This is precisely why Mr. Knox and I decided to have none of our own." Sergeant Crowley, Uncle Bernie, Malcolm, and Mrs. Knox hurried out of the house in the more conventional manner by using the back door. When they got down to the acacia bushes, Friday was waiting for them impatiently. "Hurry up," she said. "This is exciting, like a pirate treasure hunt. Come on." She pushed aside 2 bushes and disappeared into the hedge. "She can't seriously expect us to follow her," said Mrs. Knox. "What will my hairdresser say if he finds out I have literally been dragging myself through a hedge?" "I found it!" called Friday from the far side of the branches, with which Mrs. Knox leapt into the bushes like a ninja. "Where?" she demanded. A moment later they were all crouched on the ground around a circle of dry grass and twigs covered in blue milk bottle tops, blue clothes pegs, blue pens, and 1 blue sapphire bracelet. "It's a bowerbird's nest," explained Friday. "Bowerbirds collect blue things to decorate their nests to attract a mate." "How sordid," said Mrs. Knox with a shudder. "Not unlike the reasons Mr. Knox gave the bracelet to you," observed Friday. Mrs. Knox took out a lace handkerchief and used it to pick up the bracelet. "I will take this straight to the jeweller to have it cleaned." "Are you going to thank Friday?" asked Uncle Bernie. "What?" said Mrs. Knox. "It's all right," said Friday. "The reward money will be thanks enough." "You don't think you're going to get the reward just for looking in a bird's nest, do you?" asked Mrs. Knox. "The reward was offered for giving police information that leads to the retrieval of the bracelet," said Sergeant Crowley. "But it was just a bird that took it," protested Mrs. Knox. "There were no anti-bird clauses in the reward offer," countered Sergeant Crowley. Mrs. Knox had been rude and mean to him all day. He was enjoying himself now. "I suppose you could get a lawyer to help you wriggle out of your commitment, but that wouldn't look very good in the papers, would it? Wealthy woman too mean to reward an 11-year-old. "Very well," said Mrs. Knox. "Harold will just have to run up a few more billable hours, I suppose." A few minutes later, Friday, Uncle Bernie, Malcolm, and Sergeant Crowley were walking back to their car. Friday had a $10,000 cheque in her pocket. "Do you need a lift anywhere?" Sergeant Crowley asked Malcolm. "I'd rather part ways now," said Malcolm. "Here," said Friday, holding out the reward cheque. "You should take this." "What?" said Malcolm, looking at the slip in her hand. "You need this more than me," said Friday. "My school fees are paid up to the end of the semester already." "I can't take your money," said Malcolm. "Sure you can," said Friday. "I've only had it for 2 minutes. I'm not emotionally attached to it yet." "I said no," growled Malcolm, before stomping off. Sergeant Crowley shook his head. Vagrants were always such complex characters. A short time later, Sergeant Crowley, Uncle Bernie, and Friday were driving back to the police station. "How did you figure it out?" asked Sergeant Crowley. "Well, it was obvious that Malcolm didn't take it," said Friday. "It was?" asked Sergeant Crowley. "Yes, because he never said he didn't," said Friday. "If he had taken the bracelet and cleverly hidden it, then he would have been loudly protesting his innocence, demanding a lawyer, and causing trouble. But the fact that he didn't complain and just accepted the unfairness of the situation shows that he saw the accusation as so patently false that it was futile to complain." "Huh," said Sergeant Crowley. He was getting confused. "And if Malcolm didn't take it, what were the alternatives?" asked Friday. "Who was in the empty field at 7 o'clock in the morning? Nobody but the birds. Add to that the fact that the sapphires are blue and there is a large population of satin bowerbirds in this area, and the solution was obvious. I just needed to look for a large acacia bush, the preferred home of bowerbirds." And so the mystery was solved. The end. All right, well, we'll leave it there. So as I say, that's the first few chapters of Friday Barnes Under Suspicion. And I wrapped up 2 mini mysteries there for you. So that's a good start. And if you want to hear me read you the rest, you can get the audiobook from everywhere that you get audiobooks from, Audible, Apple Books, Spotify you can get audiobooks from now. Or you can read the book. So you just get the book everywhere that books are available as well. What else do I need to let you know about? I'm booking the Christmas show, so I'll make an announcement about that and drop links for that next week. But I think that's it for now. So we're heading into book week season. I hope everyone who's gone back to school this week has a good week back at school. And that's it for now. Until next time, goodbye. Hello, it's me again. If you enjoyed listening to Bedtime Stories with R.A. Spratt, it would be really helpful if you could like, subscribe, follow, and or review the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to now. Every little one of those digital affirmations helps, and the bigger this podcast gets, the more I can justify procrastinating from my real job to keep bringing these stories to you. Thank you.